Well, welcome to episode 3.
Yes.
Yes.
Of salt.
Sauna.
So.
That was perfect. That was perfect. He did it right, y'all. No, I'm just playing. Before we get started, let's do a thank you to our sponsors.
Yes.
Halo Heat.
And Everly Teas.
Yes. And with that, shall we pour our tea?
Absolutely.
All right. Okay, I did this wrong last time. I did mine and then yours. So we'll make sure I get some hang time there. Here you are, sir.
Thank you.
And today we are drinking our signature peppermint blend.
Look at the color on this.
Beautiful. Cheers.
Cheers.
So, I think tea is a good thing to have for today's conversation, for sure.
Why you say that?
Because today's conversation is soul.
Okay.
And what soul means when we think about wellness.
Okay.
And so we're going to be spilling some tea, I think.
That's how you. That was borderline
on
a dead joke.
Or I know.
Borderline on a dead joke.
I'm going to call that an auntie joke.
Okay.
It's an auntie joke. Okay. I am an auntie.
All right. So, let's discuss the soul.
Okay.
Okay.
Where shall we start?
We've been kicking around this interesting concept. I think it's interesting. And when I think about this topic of the soul, this concept keep bubbling up is that what if our human experience is the only chance where we really get to experience this version of the soul, right? How the soul is interacted or manifests through this human form. We don't know what comes before, right? Before we was birthed into this world, if we believe in, energy or connection, we don't know what's afterwards. So as the concept of the soul, does it starts when you're in the human form or afterwards? Or is it just a continuum?
Do you want my opinion?
Why not?
Okay.
We get into other levels of this.
Okay. So I think I would like to think that the soul is what technically is the eternal.
Okay.
And now, depending on what vein of religion, train of thought, upbringing, what that eternal means can vary. But I personally like to think of it as like energy signals or indicators. Okay. And kind of what you said, where we're manifested in this current state. Now, if you're under, some of the reincarnation branches of things, I think that still works and is still applicable because it just happens to be in this moment you're incarnated in whatever physical form you're in. Okay. And next go round, you may be some other physical form. Or you may not be a physical form at all. Maybe you've achieved enlightenment and now you're just pure energy or oneness or whatever, the reincarnation cycles go with. From a, Christian standpoint, I think it's, you just heaven or hell. Well, in those carnations or belief systems, you're not your same physical form either. It's something else. You're some other form. Okay. So I think no matter what it is, in that sense, what you said, this form right now is kind of like one go form, and we're just and we're a non being experiencing a being state, and it just happens to be Stephen and Donna.
Okay, that's a lot there.
I know.
Right? There's a lot there, but I think I would say this like caveat or disclaimer. One, these are just thoughts, right?
Yes.
I think truthfully,
opinions only.
No one can really like know. Not in our current state of in this human form.
Now there are some scientists out there, some quantum physicists trying to figure out the what's next.
Yes.
And they're broaching in on what they think consciousness might be.
Yes.
And that there might truly, and they're coming to the acceptance that there might truly be a soul.
Yes, but as we know it, we can't point to anything that can give some definitive answer to this original like concept. But I have a thought I want to present. For me, this one makes sense to me. That there's a difference between the soul and the spirit, right? And that the soul is something that is tied to us in our human form, right? And that the spirit, whether you want to use a religious way of connotation or defining the spirit, or if you want to use a scientific or sense of energy and electrical on a bio electrical chemical kind of thing, that the soul, because the soul, how we choose to describe it and how we choose to think about it as human beings, have a lot of emotional elements to it to define when we feeling hurt, something really grievous where it hurts my soul. And these things is all about it requires the consciousness of a human being, right? And it also have the context of your life experience and why the soul, how we describe it, write about it, think about it, and and it may vary over culture, right? What people may get hurt by or find offense or love or deep. It varies based off of culture. And we say that in that culture, something may impact my soul. Where you go to some other part of the world, they have raised in a different type of culture and different senses. That stuff don't bother them, right? Or they won't find happiness in the same way. In some places they do. And so I think for me, that's the evidence that it may be the soul is tied to the human experience, right? To be in the human form. And it needs the context of the human form in order to fully define it and give it meaning and give it shape.
Then would you say that animals do not have a soul? Even though they're finding that animals communicate and feel and...
Let me clarify, because you raised something I may have been a little lucid with mine. What I mean by human experience is not the actual being an upright higher pad where you have exposable thumbs or whatever. Thinking of it because of the level of consciousness. And so we do know consciousness exists in other animals. And so let me correct that in the sense of not tying it solely into human beings, but more of earthly living beings that move, that has a consciousness. And
but
so
then what about plants?
Because now
they're saying the
but
plants...
they may have. I don't want to. I'm saying that capsulates all.
So anything that's
I'm saying with a consciousness to it. I think soul is tied to the consciousness to define it, but to make sense of it. That's just my take.
Well, no, I'm questioning.
Okay,
I'm questioning because when you say anything that has a consciousness, what if it's that? So way back now, my grandmother used to always say, "Talk to your plants," right? And they were trying to do studies to figure out, do plants actually have a consciousness? And there is a school of thought now that is like, plants are conscious entities. They communicate. They have feeling. They can either thrive or, be neglected, and thus will outwardly show if they feel that they're
Okay.
thriving or being neglected.
Okay.
But we as humans did not necessarily, in current day, did not necessarily understand, their form of communication,
Which is
perhaps.
fine.
Yeah. So how do you, in what you're saying, how do you account for, is it all living things have a level of consciousness, or are you saying,
I can't define. I don't know what has consciousness or not. I
okay,
just, from my understanding, when I look at it, I can look at it primarily first from the soul, from the lens of being a human, because that's what I am, and how we define soul, I'm saying, soul, right? And how that is integrated and tied to that level of consciousness and the emotional state and how we perceive the world. Now, it doesn't mean that, I think this territory that is such the unknown, right? We don't know definitively to prove these things. So it's all in the theoretical. And staying in the theoretical, that it's fine to me that other living beings, whether you're using plants or animals or whatever, that has, showing signs of consciousness, that have a soul. I'm totally fine with that. How I answer it is just literally is quite binary and absolute in the sense of consciousness and being alive. And those two things need to be there to me, then thus, and tied to what we define and see as the soul.
okay, so
Right.
you,
And that's it. Nothing more, nothing less, nothing else to decode,
okay, so
as a criteria.
you also said that you felt that there was a difference between soul and spirit. So
Yes.
what do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is that, when I think about this spirit per se, my mind instantly goes to aspects of like what we know is energy, right? That we know that the human body in this human form creates a certain amount of energy in order to just function. And we know that when it's a passing on, when someone, dies, that energy is gone. But my understanding is that the world, the universe, is also based off of this energy. Um, and has, energy and frequencies and alike. And so I feel like spirit is probably the closest that man can attach onto what that really is. And I think we fully don't know what that energy do. How does it move? Where does it, does it fuse with other energy? Does it stay like, we don't know where the energy that the human body, the human form, or any living creature, actually, really any living creature, emits. Where does it go once, what I'm saying, is no longer activating that particular physical form, right? And so to me, that makes the most sense of maybe labeling it more as the spirit.
So then how is that necessarily different than the soul when one dies?
Um,
Because this, where does the soul go then? If we're separating soul and spirit.
I don't know. See, you talking to some things that I don't have the answer for. I just talk about it in the sense of defining soul. Now you adding, want to go down the vein and the lane of spirit, and I don't have these full answers. Only thing I do know that makes sense to me is that, you know when it comes back, I'm looping it back to soul. That soul requires a measure of consciousness and also the living activity of being alive in order
Okay.
to define and give it shape and give it understanding and meaning.
So, and I think
So
that's where we differ,
so
because
I
I tie soul and spirit together,
mhm.
and so I don't know if it's a cause and effect or just a pairing that comes. I don't see them as separate, because I see when something dies, its spirit, its soul, its energy, all of its energy markers have left the building. They're gone. So that's why I'm trying to understand why you're making that demarcation.
I think the demarcation, if I had to put a demarcation, is a difference between consciousness and energy. See,
But so you're saying
a body,
consciousness is
a
not
body,
energy?
a body. I'm not saying that consciousness is not energy. It's totally exclusive. That I don't know. But also, we know that the body in the human form can still exist without consciousness. We know various conditions or whatever people, whether it's in a coma, whether someone's brain dead, that the body, if it just have energy pumping through it, can still function. But it doesn't animate, it can't communicate, it can't, move around, it can't make decisions of its own, it doesn't have autonomy, it doesn't have shape and form other than the physical mass that it is in. We know that to be a truth. And so if we say that they are coupled, if spirit and soul is coupled in those states, then that seems like to me a perfect example of a decoupling.
But then even in that state where someone's on what we call unconscious, they've done studies where it's like people that are in comas, they actually have an awareness of what's going on around them.
And sometimes, some people are brain
So,
dead. And what about the brain dead state? Not just comas, but in the brain dead state.
so if you are brain dead, then you are actually dead.
But the body still can function with energy and
That means
forcing it to emit.
you're being sustained. Your organs are being sustained through mechanical purposes. That's usually to like if they need to do like an organ donation kind of thing.
Yeah, but people can stay alive using mechanicals for quite some time,
Yes,
and that's still energy. You can't. In order for that, it's
but that's
still
outside mechanical.
energy.
But that's outside mechanical energy pumping and keeping your organs active.
Okay. 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 I don't get. I don't get. I don't. Okay.
Because
I
I'm
don't get what. I'm just like I have a thought part and a theory. You have one.
and I'm
I'm
trying
not
to
in
understand
opposition to it.
yours.
This is my. I mean, this is it. This is mine,
So,
and it's a totality. But okay.
that's I'm trying to understand yours based on my understanding of what I've learned. And in order to do that, I have to question you. And so I'm not opposed to
No,
yours, but I'm trying to square circles to say,
I
okay,
can't.
if I've
Mm-hmm,
learned this,
mm-hmm.
then how does that relate to what you're saying?
I'm not fully knowledgeable to answer all these questions that you pose
So are you open to
because we both have admitted this is the unknown. It's
true,
such unknown. So you're asking for like known things that I don't know. I have just
but
a theory.
are you open to listening to my questions and what I've learned and adding it to what you've learned to
Yes,
have more known.
I'm open to it, but you're asking me to answer. And I'm going to fall on things of a lack of knowledge that I cannot answer it because it's a philosophy that is not proven.
But then
So you
I'm
just
asking,
keep that
I
in
understand.
consideration in the sense of the questioning and the question.
So when a person asks a question,
Mm-hmm.
though, of someone's philosophy,
Mm-hmm.
and if they don't have
Mm-hmm.
the knowledge to back up why they believe what they're believing,
Mm-hmm.
then we both should be questioning. We should create more questions to
Yeah.
try to understand what is the relative truth of the matter is what I would surmise.
Okay.
Do you agree or disagree?
I mean I think it has a cap with that because you can question for question's sake without we sitting here with a limited pool of knowledge and we just have a philosophy. And so we asking of each other instead of to me that falls into a sense of let's pull a series of questions and then basically, to look at like, okay, brainstorming or where can we find the questions, because if we pose it to each other, there's a limitation on our own individual knowledge and sources and resources that, especially if you pose them to me, like I can't answer those questions. So there's already a cap there. You know what I'm saying? And so just posing them, you can keep asking me, but I'm like, it comes to a point where like I don't know. I will have to, outside of this forum, start seeking out and searching maybe for those answers. But you just keep asking me question upon question upon question. I already conveyed the limitations of that. So I think the questions, if it was formed not in the sense of just like, let me just ask you questions, it's more of these are the things that I kind of question. And then if we was having a discussion of like, how would we go about answering or maybe proving out if these questions, what are the answers are them, what is the approach of it, and then assessing it as it relates to my philosophy that I put out there and see if it's valid or not, then that's a different, I think that's more productive than just,
But I thought
asking
that's
a
what I
question.
was doing by asking, saying, trying to get clarification for your thought.
Mhm.
And then if you're saying you don't know, then okay, then the next thing would be, okay, well, how does that thought relate to my thought? And what questions do we still have open? That's literally what I'm saying.
That's not how it's coming off. But okay. I want to say something. Okay. That's how it's coming on my side of the street, but it's okay.
Okay. Well, we went down a rabbit hole,
We did.
and I don't think we got anywhere with that rabbit hole.
No, we did not.
But that was your initial question. So you took us down that rabbit hole. Uh-huh.
I'm not gonna do that on do this on film, dear. So let's transition then. Does the soul has any bearing on one's individual wellness
Well,
in your mind? Sure. And if so, how?
but if we're coming from different viewpoints of soul, in my viewpoint of soul,
Okay.
which includes spirit, then yes,
Okay.
it
And
does.
then how?
The how would mean that if you don't, similar to your physical body, if you don't enhance your mind, if you don't enhance your inner well being, then over time it atrophies. Similar to like how your outer body atrophies if you
Hmm.
don't work out, if you don't do things to keep yourself healthy.
That's an
So,
interesting concept. I never thought about it that way.
so yeah, like if you don't read, if you don't do
Mm.
puzzles, if you
Mm-hmm.
don't seek knowledge, then your
Mm-hmm.
mind will atrophy.
Okay.
If you don't, look for, ways to love your neighbor and support, other human beings in the earth,
Mm-hmm.
then your inner soul, spirit, whatever you want to call it, will start to atrophy as well.
Hmm.
And I think that leads to kind of like what we're seeing in today's times where there's not a sense of community as it once was because everybody feels very isolated.
That's interesting. I never thought about it in that sense that the soul can atrophy. That's a very interesting concept to me. You know, it has a logic to it that has a certain resonance to me, and even your I if I were to like say, okay, cool, that the soul can atrophy in the concept, it would put some explanation or some sense of why this world right now is the way that it is. Because that's the biggest thing I think a lot of people are wrestling with. It's like, why are we here? Why did we get here? Why, you know, why don't we care or being more thoughtful, or why it seems like there's more mean or viciousness or cruelty that we open to inflict upon each other, you know? Because some arguments or some explanations that we don't we're not going to church like we used to, or we're not
I don't even think that's
investing
necessarily
in or
necessary.
having a common thing that moves us, that brings us together, right? That's where people hail about the Super Bowl. It's like, well, it's probably one of the last venues that we all collectively believed in and, willing to accept as a common truth.
I don't know, because
And that
people were really hating on the Chiefs this last one.
that's true, but that's some of the answers that when I look about and people in conversation or in media and other places talk about and try to give, right, as to why. And no one's ever said the concept of that maybe we have as the human race, dealing with a lot of atrophy of soul atrophy,
Yeah.
right?
I think there's been other times in history where there's indicators of this. So I don't necessarily think this particular time is any worse than any previous time.
I
Because
understand. Yeah.
because there's been times where it's been just about as bad as it is
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
But I think it is in those times, like the dark ages, like there was lack of knowledge. There was, hoarding of wealth. There was just being mean to be mean and taking over and greed. And like they had all those same things, that we have today. And I think there's always like that resurgence when you get to like the Renaissance periods or you get to Enlightenment. It's always centered around basically that relooking inward, focusing, on inner wellness, and then understanding inner wellness then should be translating to what you do outwardly too. It's like it always kind of comes back around. Everything is very cyclical when you really think about it. And so I think that's why it's like at some point we'll get enough atrophy of the human spirit, soul, whatever you want to call it. And people will then be like, nope, 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 this is not right. And then they'll kind of come on back around and start working on themselves and rebuilding that inner spirit and rebuilding, that mindfulness of their fellow human being. And things that start to get, nicer and better. Now, I think one of the key differences between former times in history when this happened versus now is just the amount of information availability, whether it be misinformation, actual information, whatever you want to call it, opinions, facts, truth, half truths, whatever. The availability of all of that is, I think, now a lot higher than in those past times when we've had these kind of
yeah
elements at play.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's the only difference. I hear your point, because I think I'm also hearing that spiritual entropy is correlated with apathy, right? That we dealing with. I do think that what makes this time period different is correctly the flow of information. I think the faucet is turned up high, and I don't think that the human brain can process this much. I don't think the human spirit or soul or whatever can process accurately this much data, this much stuff coming at it, right? That is emotionally wrenching, that is sometimes based off of someone's livelihood at threat and fear. Even good stuff. It's like you know, I think it's hard. I think it's hard because the volume is just too much. Because you seeing we exposed to what happens all around the whole entire globe, right?
That's true.
All at once. This is probably the most major period where the human beings can traverse around the globe in the most easiest and the largest volume on a regular consistent basis. So that flow and that intermingle, some continents people didn't even realize there was a whole nother continent, another landmass for hundreds, what I'm saying, for hundreds, what I'm saying, or a couple of thousand years. Some, human beings didn't even know that there was a whole nother land, right? No. And so you're only dealing with issues on your continent. Now it's everywhere. And so if you're looking at hardship, you're looking at problems, looking at, sometimes the worst of humanity, it is it's flooding the zone. And I think it's hard on our spirit. And I don't think we have learned how to pause enough to sort out and say, hey, what do I personally feel? What is I know the group's saying we should be bad at this other group or we shouldn't care. But what do I feel? Do I really feel this way? Do I really want to treat another group or think of another group in this way? Um, I don't think we get enough time to sort to be able to slow down the world enough to even ask that before someone's saying, feel this way, go act, do something.
And
So
that's why he said, turn TV off.
yeah.
That's
So
why he said it.
okay, so what are the answers? From what was your what's some of the things? How about this now? How about this? Maybe let's pivot in terms of just everyone theoretical, but like for you, what do you do to not let your soul atrophy?
I'm very cognizant about doom scrolling. So I'd like to know what's happening in the world and in the United States and in our local community. So I
Mm-hmm.
do read the headlines,
Mm-hmm.
which oftentimes, even now, as I read them, I'm like, they're not even indicative of the actual article sometimes.
So true.
So it now it's even getting harder to trust even some of the
Yes.
headlines. But about 5 years ago, just reading the headlines, you could kind of understand what was going on without having to read the articles themselves. But I do still try to at least read the headlines, and occasionally I'll go into certain articles from reputable sources to really say, okay, what's the what behind it?
Mm-hmm.
Leave out the opinion. Just give me what happened. Um, but I limit that. I try to time box when I do that. And
Okay.
then after that, I try to find puppies and kittens and ducks and animals doing funny things, babies
Mm-hmm.
doing funny things, because then all of the harshness that I just read is then counterbalanced with something positive, fun, silly, get you laughing kind of thing, a nice little chuckle to reset your mind that, even though it's all doom and gloom over here, there's still other normal, fun things happening, even in spite of all of this doom and gloom.
Okay.
So then that gives me my initial balance.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Other things that I do like to do, my sauna time, my salt time, red light time. In those moments it is kind of what you said, that pause of I don't have to really be doing anything. I might put on an audio book that's interesting. I may put on my favorite cartoon and
Mm-hmm.
watch it over and over again because it's funny to me and it's safe and normal, and like, again, remind you that even though there's a lot of doom and gloom out there, the world isn't that bad. And
Mm-hmm.
then interacting with friends and family, like
Mm-hmm.
just reaching out. and seeing how people are doing and
Okay.
catching up. I think that does something to us and helps us keep those connections and feeling of togetherness.
Cool.
What do you do?
It's almost like a three-pronged system that I do. Okay. One is um, I believe that human beings need a hobby. They need something that they do that is for them, that they just find fun and enjoyment and can get lost in it, right? Mine is doing art, right? Just creatively find art. And people always ask, like, what do you plan on doing with it? Are you doing it? I was like, I just make it. And then like, what do you do with it? I just store it. I don't know yet what I want to do, but I also know that whether I'm taking an hour or 5 hours or whatever, it allowed me to shut out the world and do something that just like I like it. Um, it makes me happy. It feels so satisfying to create, right? And I know everyone's hobby is not creation, and it doesn't have to be creation. I think that's where in the past I think I kind of was kind of get into creating something and make it fun. That's my jam. Some people hobby is reading their favorite book and having a series of books and things or whatever. Some people hobby is to work on a program and computer code or something like that. If that's what makes you like just happy and fun, that it ain't tied to like I gotta do this for work. I gotta do this in order to get some money back. I gotta do this in order because folks are pressuring me to deliver. I think sometimes you just need to have some things that just your hobby that you do for fun. Now, if you can do that and monetize it, and it's not that big of a deal where you don't feel, burdened by, okay, that's a double win. Another prong is also just saying, hey, being mindful of my body and my mental health, right? When we went on our cruise, what I'm saying, last fall, over the fall, like I started to think like, hey, I need to start thinking about how to get back to taking care of my body, or being mindful of that so that I just feel better. I just feel good, you know? Um, and feeling good helps your mental state. If you're feeling bad and you're in pain or you're not, it kind of bogs down and kind of, combine that. Um, and I think third is really do a lot of reflecting and soul searching on like what type of person I want to be, even in this chaotic world and all that is coming at me and trying to tell me I should be this or that. What type of human and humanity? And so some things is like, yeah, I'm compassionate or want to give in ways, even though at times people like, why you gonna do this for your sister? Why you do this for this person? They not really. And it's like, well, I want to be that person because I gotta like when I look in the mirror, I gotta like Steven. And this helped me like Steven. But I also know that I've had a period in my life where I looked in the mirror and I did not like Steven. So those three things help me in a sense of like, hey, what's my North Star? Where's my compass pointing to deal with the onslaught, and for me, that's some of the core that makes up my truth of self. Stephen loves, saying art and being creative. Right? It defines me. Stephen, in spite of hardships and times or whatever, I want to be dependable. I want to show up for the people that I care about, that I want to believe in, that there are connections and bonds that you can craft that is fulfilling. Um, and I want to be that for people, whether I get it in return, you know. And then I need to make sure that I don't fall apart too soon before, you know what I'm saying? Like my mind and my body should be try to keep those things in alignment like my mind, I feel is very sharp still. even though my eyesight seemed to be kind of going a little blurry and, suspect. It's
You
a
gotta
little
have those
sus.
readers. Gotta put them readers
It's a little
on.
sus, you know what I'm saying? This left knee sometimes, Or we walked up the theater, I felt a little crook. I felt it a little bit yesterday too. And I was like, hold on now, and even though age is tapping me on the shoulder, um, I don't need to. I want to try to be a little bit careful to make sure that they're not too far apart. That my brain feels just as sharp as a 30-year-old, but my body feels like a 60-year-old. But if it happens, it happens. But it shouldn't be happening because I neglect it. It shouldn't happen because I'm not getting my checkups. It shouldn't happen because I want to do my sauna treatments and my salt treatments. It shouldn't happen because, like, okay, I had some junk food. Like, dude, do you have to have junk food every single day? Or can you throw some, saying, like, go to the store and get your vegetables, whatever, make it a staple to your diet? Yes, you had a cookie. But did you also have some veggies, whatever, so you get nutrients into your body as well? Are you, trying to sleep better? Or are you listening to people giving you sound advice? Or you being a stubborn old, or whatever, and thinking you like, I just deal with the consequences of it. And so these are the three things I do. And they all surprisingly impact to me my soul. When I'm feeling heavy and burdened and wore out, man, get into some art. You've seen it. You're like, oh, you see, and then I go in there and I, scroll in that garage or do something for about 3 or 4 hours and I'm coming out and you like, I'm skipping and dancing and acting a fool and wacky. And it's like, it has totally changed my spirit because it's speaking to my soul. I feel fulfilled. I'm happy. And maybe before starting to do something or pick up a paintbrush or whatever, I wasn't feeling happy. Nothing's changed. The outside world didn't change. The political system didn't change. The plight of being a black man didn't change. Our finances or whatever the case may be and stuff like that, even maybe issues between you and I have not changed. But I was happy because of that. So it's like, that's the power of it. And when you saw me with, my back and stuff like that and stuff starting to ache or whatever, I acted, my mood and my energy is off. And then when they're getting alleviated, I'll, you know, come back to myself in a sense. And so each of them, or how when I went and did that, talk to those young men, right? And showed up and just spoke to them about the possibilities of life and things of that nature. And it's like, man, that was a high that lasted for about a good 4 days. I was like, every time I thought about it, I'm like, and if I really think hard and teleport myself back to it, I'm like, man, just to feel good to say, you know what? I gave back to some young men. I contribute to something, hopefully a little bit positive to their life, gave them some more better insight. My hardships can be weaponized as an investment to young men that, when I think about it, I was exactly those young men, you know, needing broader understanding and someone to actually just give a damn, you know. And so it's those things for me.
Okay.
So any last words, any last things you want to say before we wrap up about the soul?
I think this was a very interesting topic to try to cover
Yes.
in a very short amount of time.
Yes.
And it's interesting that I think we had similar takes, but still yet different takes.
Yes.
But in the end, you still have to feed your soul.
Yes. And I agree with you that whether we want to call it, the soul can atrophy or not, maybe whether the terminology is really fully spot on. I think the concept has a lot of validity to it. Because I often wonder, where's the empathy? Where's the compassion? Where's the line to say, hey, there's some things we're not going to do. Just because we can, we shouldn't. And although it doesn't impact me, I can see how that can impact somebody else. And it's like, you know what? Nah. So you gave me some food, really solid food for thought. With that being said, thank you for this conversation.
Of course.
I'm
It's a good
excited.
conversation.
Yes.
All right. So next time we will. What are we covering next time?
I don't think we have decided. It would be a surprise for each other and for our viewers.
All right.
All right.
It's a surprise.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, you for tuning in.
Yes. The South Side of Soul.